to our first event in 5 years. We're very happy to have you. My name is Kelly. I'm the studio assistant here at the Second Reach, and I'm very happy to introduce an award-winning architect, James Abell.
Well, thank you so much for everyone coming. This was a surprise for me because I called up Design Within Reach and they said, you used to have some events where we get to talk about design and interiors and architecture. And I said, well, it's funny that you call because we're thinking about doing something like that. So I wanted to make this first outing a big success so they do it again. So all of you that I beg to come, please, thank you for being here. So many of you know about me over the years. I'm an architect. I'm also a landscape architect, and I've been so intrigued and blessed to do urban design all around the United States. A lot of downtown rehabilitation studies, campus master planning.
James, a little closer to the voice.
Got to do it closer. Yeah. So we're going to talk about design philosophy tonight, and that's really important. But probably more important is our responsibility to society. And I'm proud to tell you that I'm one of the founders of the Rio Salado Architecture Foundation. We just celebrated our 40th year, and we have sent 50 architecture students around the world to study architecture. So I hope you'll keep the Arizona Architecture Foundation in mind and maybe support us in our annual golf tournament. And of course, the foundation advances education. We encourage architects to get involved in civic planning, something I did for Tempe for 10 years in the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have to be advocates for open space and parks, right? No one's doing that. And it makes the city so important to have the green and have the open space. And of course, I mentioned the urban design studies. Can you believe that the Rio Salado project was started at ASU's architecture school? Major impact on the urban environment. So people say, what's your best project? I think it's downtown Tempe. For me to give 10 years to the Planning and Zoning Commission and say no to some really bad proposals that make some rich and powerful people mad. People used to say, oh, I bet as an architect you get hired by developers because you're on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I said, no, I made everybody mad. I voted for a 30-day continuance, come back with a better plan. But it's interesting when you see this aerial view because we realize downtown Tempe, there's a lot of urban courtyards. How neat that the city hall is set on top of an urban courtyard with all the offices down below. The Center Point courtyard. It's like New Orleans in some ways where you have these little avenues. So I'm really wondering if Sonoran architecture ought to incorporate courtyards when they're key. Also, here we are in the midst of a designer showroom, and I gotta say, I'm in love with the furniture in this place.
Yeah.
It's so neat that they would host us. I've had a Harry Bertoya chair. The one that he's sitting in, I've had that chair for more than 40 years. It's mini architecture. It's one of those wonderful things you can have, yeah. And amazing that he designed this timeless chair when he was 37. So yeah, big thank you to Design Within Reach for having us and hosting the food. And if this is a reasonable success, maybe they'll have some of you here. We've got some prominent architects in the audience here. Maybe it's your turn next. We'll kick it off here by talking about the Sonoran Desert. What an amazing region. It goes from Mexico, California, several rivers. So what's the second largest city in Sonora? Some people say Mesa, Arizona is like 500,000 people now. How big's Tucson? So anybody know what the second largest city in Sonora is? It's Hermosillo. Hermosillo, Mexico, 800,000 people. They're living with the same challenges, same water problems, same concerns for human comfort, heating, air conditioning. It's interesting too that the urban pattern is such that almost everybody's got a flat reflective roof. Not very many red tile roofs. There's a few tin roofs, a few galvanized steel roofs, but they have the same bead island effect concerns that we have. And maybe there's something to be learned from another culture, another city. It's been years and years since I've been to Rumicio. How many of you have been there and seen the gigantic carob trees? Really, an amazing town. So who calls the tune? When the piper pays the piper and the developer comes to town and says, I want a certain thing, architects have to be awfully charismatic, sales-oriented, persuasive, to try and talk the developer into the right thing. I'm kind of intrigued by the number of bungalows that I see in downtown Phoenix with tin roofs. You think to yourself, it's kind of a neat thing that we have sort of a 100-year-old tradition of brick masonry buildings with tin roofs. So how do we find our Sonoran flavor? Years ago, I worked with a big firm downtown, DWL Architects. We did Sky Harbor Terminal number 3. And I love this frieze here that has kind of a southwestern theme. And some people said, well, is that indigenous peoples? What is that exactly? You know, and it's kind of interesting that we have a certain flavor and a certain geometry to Sonora that was picked up by this airport in a kind of a generalized way. Maybe 1 foot in the past, maybe 1 foot in the future. But even some of the furnishings and carpeting and wall coverings, when Sky Harbor Terminal number 3 opened up, people said, this feels like Phoenix. You remember how airports used to feel so generic? And Terminal number 3 was one of the first to have interesting shops. People said, oh my gosh, I didn't expect to have all these interesting shops. Well, that's kind of common now. So here we're looking at 2 pieces of architecture that are 25 years, or 200 years apart. The one down below is kind of blocked out the date, but the one down below is 1978. Yeah, that was a long time ago. And yet you might see that there's some massing similarities. The white reflective architecture. The one down below shows the texture of the individual masonry units. But do we make history into a friend? Or are we slaves to be copied? And really, does that serve the culture if we just copy the past? So what if painting stayed the same? My gosh. You know, Marcel Duchamp was intrigued with these time-lapse photographs that were going on. You know, maybe you've seen these things where there's the horse riding and they show the time-lapse. Well, there's one of a naked woman walking down the stairs. And Marcel Duchamp, with his Dada group, wanted to capture the feeling of that. So here we have the famous nude descending the staircase. Some people say, I've got no place in my world for that. I want the realistic look. It's like photography can do that. We want to capture the feeling of it. And I think that's what architecture tries to do. We need to capture the feeling of the culture. So here we can maybe learn from ancient principles, the 1200 Common Era Adobe compound. Now, as it turns out, I designed this building. This is an exhibition at the Pueblo Grande Museum. And yet we were challenged by the docents and the curators and the archaeologists to try and recreate the feeling of the ancient Hoboken in scale and form and texture. We did it with modern materials, but we're really trying to capture the essence of Sonora here. And so we even did that on the inside with the pit house. So I guess when people ask me, what are you working on? I said, well, I'm working on some ancient dwellings. I'm working on some ancient 900 AD houses. So yeah, history can be a friend, but I think we need to also look to the future. Now this is unusual. We bring the technology from Spain But instead of building it out of stone, we do it with adobe. Really unusual. And when you consider the time, I mean, Father Keo was walking through here so many centuries ago. You think about, my gosh, the power of the Roman Catholic Church to send people out into the desert in 1692. But here we are. This is one of the oldest European buildings in Arizona. This is our inheritance. You inherited this. What are we going to do with it? Well, probably churches need to look different today, okay? A lot of people are traditionalists, but I think there's some things to learn here. And maybe what I'm learning is that you can do some amazing expressionist architecture out of adobe. It's very plastic. It's amazing. They really kind of had some of this back in the day. And I think a lot of us do enjoy the break from the orthogonal geometry. Oh, courtyards, here we are again. You gotta have courtyards, right? I mean, it's funny how these friars, the priests brought with them peach trees, they brought with them citrus trees. I don't know if you really ever thought about it, but citrus really started in Indonesia and Vietnam. The Portuguese brought it around to the Iberian Peninsula in Spain. Then it came across the Atlantic into Mexico. It's amazing how citrus went 3/4 of the way around the world to get here. But this is how it started, where we had courtyards that were protected. It's where we would grow food. It's part of our legacy. And then after the World War II, we had a building boom, and a super light concrete block was a major participant. And thank goodness John F. Long built all of these masonry homes. He somehow, I guess he read the Three Little Pigs, or I don't know, we're going to build them out of wooden studs. We're going to build them out of solid masonry. And I think that is our legacy in Sonoran, to build with heavy masonry. It has the thermal mass capability. Kind of neat the salesman that he brought along with him. Huh? He was Mr. General Electric. And he introduced a new thing, a cul-de-sac. There it is. People wind up. His wife's name was Mary, so they named it Maryvale, Mary's Valley. And yeah, one of the first cul-de-sacs. And masonry buildings that would hold up. Now, I don't know if you folks can really answer for your own house, but I was going to ask you, how many people live in a wood frame stucco house? Well, maybe you don't know what the construction is. But the next slide kind of scares the heck out of me. Because this is the termite map in Maricopa County. And you're living in Paradise Valley in a wood frame house. There's a good chance that it's being eaten alive right now. Gilbert and Chandler, one of the worst areas. Don't buy a wooden frame house. I've kind of wondered if they would let me teach a class at ASU on how to buy a house or how to remodel a house in an environmentally responsible way. But it's your biggest investment, and yet people don't study up. I don't know why. So here we have the typical Awatuki, typical Phoenix. You don't see a lot of green in this slide, do you? Houses are very close together, maximizing the sales of lots. A lot of black asphalt. I don't know if you've ever held one of these concrete tiles in your hand, but each one of these tiles weighs about 10 pounds. You might have at least 2 tons of thermal mass on your roof. It's soaking up the heat all day long. When the sun goes down, the thermal mass continues to radiate. It's like having a bunch of rocks on your roof. Why would we do this? Well, because the neighbors did it, I guess. But are we tired of the red tile yet? I mean, white stucco and red tile, is that what we inherited? I guess they call it the Santa Barbara style, right? So it's characterized by some pretty neat things. I like the open beam ceilings. I think everybody kind of likes that. Maybe that's part of our Sonoran legacy, open beam ceilings. I think the courtyards really make sense again. You can have an empty courtyard, outdoor living. That's what we're all about. And there's an authenticity here. It's pretty certain that this is not made of wood frame and stucco, right? You can kind of tell that there's solid masonry to accomplish those shapes. There's a authenticity there. And again, my thesis is that these courtyards offer humane urbanism. So a St. Cloud, Minnesota developer came to town. We interviewed 5 architects. They decided on my little firm because we were also landscape architects, and they thought they could get a 2-for-1 like me. But we explored doing the tunnel form approach. These walls are only 6 inches thick, and yet it's such a monolithic kind of construction that you can go 5 and 6 stories with this. And so I was really intrigued with the idea of, could I make the tunnel form into the architecture? Maybe the bones of the building should be expressive. So they asked me to do 2 studies. Here they are. Yeah, the Santa Barbara style. I got stuck. You're forced into that. So I tried to make my favorite version look a little bit better. I don't think the palm trees really fooled them very much, but I tried to make the modern really show off what the tunnel form could do. And the public perception from the developer standpoint was, even if it's the same construction costs, people will be afraid to go into your modern. They're more comfortable. The public perception of the hotel business in Phoenix was to have the stucco and the red tile. So when you're forced into stucco and red tile, what are the other attributes that you can lean on? How can you find some authenticity? Well, I was fortunate to be persuasive enough to talk them into a 2-story lobby. Kind of unusual for a motel to have that. It's a 125 hotel. But I did get the 2-story lobby. You can see I've got a fireplace there, and we sunk that down into the lobby, so there's a little fire pit there. Well, I got the porte cochere, we got the blue windows. Oh, got the monumental window for the lobby. That was an important one. And this lobby was an authentic plaster interior. So this plaster interior really kind of came alive. And I walked in there, and they had a whole crew of plasterers in there, and they knew I was the architect, and they started yelling, "There's too many corners in here to finish. This looks like a Mexican bordello." Well, I knew I'd done a good thing there. When the plasterers were comparing it, and it's like, maybe that's the authentic Sonoran look here. I don't know. But you can see that I have a little fun with the ornament, the beam hanger ornament that was done with plaster. The accolade over the top of the window was done in plaster. One of the rarest times I got to pick out the carpet, I got to do the fabric seam, made some custom pillows, I got to do the interior landscape. It's really a pretty fun thing. And I got a courtyard. I convinced them that the exercise building should be a separate building so we could have a courtyard. So victories there. So where did it all come from? Came from a rainy climate, right? Isn't it funny how all of these cultures have these barrel tiles? I guess there's this idea that these clay tiles are made on the thigh of the workers. That's why they're tapered. And so it's funny how these red tile roofs are sort of in the measure of the human body, and the way they interlock and the way they work together. But it's really from Mediterranean. I guess the Chinese had their barrel tiles, right? All of these cultures can be roofing materials for clay. But I'm not sure it's appropriate for us. And so when we look at desert cities around the world, they have flat roofs. And they're reflected. This is Cairo. It's kind of interesting when you start to go on Google Earth and look at desert cities. Everybody does a little bit different. There's a few tin roofs here that are silver and reflective, so that makes some sense. So I kind of wonder if maybe the metal roofing isn't a nice idea. Now people say, a metal roof, that's like a cat on a hot tin roof. It's like, yeah, but there's no thermal mass. It's only 22 gauge metal. When the sun goes down, the heat dissipates. Really, in all the times that I've remodeled schools and built new schools, I think metal roofs are the right answer for the taxpayers. You're getting away from the petrochemicals and the asphalt. So here we have some examples that we have drawn on for years. The one on the top I like a lot because of the tin roof. Probably Adobe construction. Like the color of the barrel, that's pretty cool. And then here we have these sheet metal bungalows. And that was a great thing for the territorial pioneers because it was recyclable. You take it off one building and put it on another. It never went away. Just kept reusing it again and again. And how weird that the buffaloes came all the way from India. Look it up. It's funny that this kind of most famous building, residential building style that's all across North America all started in India. So we draw on some of these historical elements as well. Oh man, do you do Santa Fe? Oh, wait a minute. It's like 400 miles away. But some people think, well, Phoenix ought to be another Santa Fe. I guess a lot of you folks have been to the famous La Fonda Hotel. Everybody thinks it's so charming and so historic. Oh, it was built about 6 years before the Arizona built the hotel. It's really not that old. Mary Jane Elizabeth Coulter had her fun in the teens of the 1920s. But it's stagecraft, folks. I'm sorry. La Fonda Hotel is not really. Now, this is the authentic thing. How can you tell this authentic? Is it the slightly battered walls, the tapering of the walls? Is it the hand plastering? This stuff melts in the rain, so I have to get out every couple of years and replaster it, right? Keeps it alive, keeps it moving. Oh, and we do it so badly. We want to copy Santa Fe and Phoenix. What a mess. I mean, I can't believe what it ends up being sometimes now. And Portland cement stucco. I don't know. I'm not getting a lot of nods in the room here, but I'm getting a few. Now, this is an interesting comparison. I think I might be the only amateur historian who's brought up the two 1938 masonry walls. I love the one on the left. I was a freshman at ASU when we went up here to South Mountain. And I thought, is this what the professors were talking about when they talked about a building growing out of the living rock? I mean, down below we have living rock that's been there for thousands of years. And then humans come along, and in a very empathetic way, we create this antithesis. We create this battered wall. We create this, really interesting stack of rocks. And of course, this is done by the Civilian Conservation Corps, Works Progress Administration, young men and women that were not trained as stonemasons. Well, you can see it's pretty amateurish kind of stonework here, but it really feels pretty organic. As compared with the Frank Lloyd Wright experiment, apparently Wright had seen some retaining walls that some builder had done where the rocks were leaned up against some wooden forms and concrete slurry was poured behind. And I think he thought it might be a really interesting experiment that wouldn't require trained stonemasons. But my gosh, when I first saw this as a freshman, I thought, this is not at all what I was hoping for. It seems like paper mache, or it seems like some odd material. I think there's a reason that this kind of masonry hasn't been replicated very often, right? Labor intensive. There's a lot of voids inside. When I was teaching at the Frank Lloyd Wright School, there was a time when a rat had died in one of these walls and it stank for 6 weeks. So it's kind of an interesting approach, but I always thought it looked like peanut brittle. I'm sorry, I grew up in a place in Colorado where we built some parks out of stone. This was the zoo in southern Colorado where, again, the CCC and the WPA used stone to build these bear pits. And you can tell that they were amateurs, but there was some care and there was some thinking. If you look at the next shot, this is what I call organic stone. This is a bear pit. You can see the bear habitat right here is about 4 or 5 feet high. So the scale of the bear habitat and the bear enclosure, you can tell these are massive, massive stones. But they've been fit together in like a jigsaw puzzle. And for me, this is what organic stone work should look like. And I spent a lot of time as a kid looking at that stuff and thinking about it, wanting to be a mason. Yes, my parents forced me into a desk job instead of being a mason. So here we have two interesting resort properties. On the left is one very much of the kind of La Fonda. Robert Evans was an architect that was intrigued with the Southwest. He was intrigued with Adobe. You know his work from the Chokaki Inn. And here's the historic Kellogg Mansion that turned into the Casablanca Resorts, and people remember that. And then here we have a custom-made concrete masonry unit, the Arizona Biltmore Hotel, with Albert Chase MacArthur. Of course, Wright was made consultant for about 12 or 16 weeks. So Phoenix really is a masonry town. It kind of blew my mind when they built the Hyatt Regency Hotel, and they used 8816 masonry to go about 18 stories. I don't know what the foundations look like, but that is one incredibly tall building. And then, of course, you know, Symphony Hall is a very expressive masonry building. And of course, again, here our identity in Sonoran is that we're a resort town. So we always talk about this. What is our place as humans in the midst of all this nature? And it's really easy for all of us to claim that we love nature and we imitate nature, but really buildings stick out of the landscape in the most deliberate way. And of course, the forces of nature are always trying to take the building back into the ground. I've lived in the same house for 40 years, and I didn't even really get to finish building it because it's constantly needing repairs. It's funny about that, but I guess what we can do as architects is try and choose those materials, like the metal roof, like the masonry construction, what the termites see here, principal investment. So here's the combination of nature and the built environment. And of course, the intrigue of the advertisement was that you can enjoy summer all winter when you come to Phoenix. And when I was a kid, I remember seeing on TV where it would say, fly your sinuses to Arizona to get relief, or take Christian. So we were always known as this resort destination. So, major fire at the Biltmore Hotel in 1973. And I was told by an ASU professor, you need to get down to the Biltmore Hotel and interview with William Wesley Peters, because it's the first time they've ever hired outside their own ranks. And I went down there and I was hired immediately as a draftsman for the summer. And they set me to work on designing carpets right away. And within a few weeks, they hired some more experienced draftsmen. They borrowed some people from Peter Lindrum's office, Dwayne Lewis's office. But suddenly there were these 5 soldiers of fortune that were thrown together. We didn't know each other. And who would have think that the 32-year-old job captain, who had just recently gotten a license, he's in our audience today. Raleigh Hall is here. Raleigh was the amazing guy that led the construction drawing, reconstruction for the Biltmore Hotel. What a fantastic summer. So a lot of people will ask me about where did the Biltmore block come from. Albert Chase MacArthur loved music, studied music at Harvard, studied sacred geometry. He was a Rosicrucian. He was a Mason. And how interesting that this is really the intersection of 2 sound chords. That was his inspiration, and hired a sculptor named Emery Kopka to help him out. That's where the Biltmore block came from. And I think there might be a future for custom concrete masonry units. I think we have the DoubleTree on Scottsdale Road that has a custom masonry approach. So it's a neat thing for the desert. So here we see the famous ballroom, now called the Aztec Room. It's a concrete frame. Albert Chase MacArthur was a Chicago architect that knew a lot about industrial buildings. He did a lot of concrete industrial buildings in Chicago before he came out here in 1925. Arizona had a Practice Act in 1922, so Albert Chase MacArthur became one of the first licensed architects in Arizona. And licensed from Frank Lloyd Wright, the textile block system. This is a drawing that I did clear back 1973 to kind of explain how the system works. But you can see all these units stacked up. And hey, how neat to see the hill without the Wrigley Mansion. This is before. Okay, so here's Albert Chase MacArthur. And did a lot of neat things for Phoenix. He and his brother started the first radio station in Phoenix. And it's now called KTAR. And they had the Dodge dealership in Phoenix. And they started the Phoenix Country Club. But this shows the license that was signed by Frank Lloyd Wright, where it was made clear. What does it say there? Albert Chase MacArthur will remain the architect. Trying to make it absolutely clear he is and will remain the architect. Didn't work out that way in history so well, but there's the agreement. So yeah, here we go again. It's about Sonoran living outdoors. How many outdoor spaces do you see here? Quite a few green spaces. Places with flowers, places with umbrellas and tables. And the hexagon courtyard. Well, it was a couple of years ago that the Biltmore changed hands, and they had a new operator that said, we need to make more on mixed drinks. And they decided this courtyard, this hexagonal courtyard, should be the platform for a party space. And they hired my friends in Scottsdale to design a new bar. Here it is. Next slide. The Spire Bar by PHX Architects. They hired me as a consultant. It was so much fun. I really need to consult with them. And yeah, outdoor living. Here we go again. That's the Sonoran legacy. Next. Okay, now this one is not necessarily a Sonoran opportunity, but this is one of my earliest projects. I did it at the Arizona Republican Party, Ted Pappas, Tom Pappas, owned this rental space. And when my friends said they wanted to put a modern art gallery in downtown Phoenix, they said, you are crazy. Well, maybe cowboy art, but modern art isn't going to work. But my friends were determined. And I was kind of a young practitioner at the time. I was kind of doing a design build thing. So I got talked into kind of being the builder for this renovation. And it was really kind of fun. We got a whole bunch of Korean veterans living up on the second floor, some of them Vietnam veterans. We hired these guys to repaint the building. So we did a little bit of sociology and social work there by having them help us fix up the buildings. But we're down in the Deuce. The Deuce was kind of a rough place back in the day. And when I was doing this gallery, it was still a little shaky. We couldn't get people at Symphony Hall to even come across the street to the art galleries. But if you were to try and fix this up on a $25,000 budget, what color would you paint the building? Should it be white and reflective like Sonoran? It's kind of a hard choice. Color is a tricky thing. I told Tom Pappas I wanted to paint the building gray. He said, you're kidding me. Downtown, it's already too gray. I said, well, you haven't studied color. Let me show you some mock-ups. So we did it. And I think it came out really rather well. There's some colors that fit the 1905 building. The custom light fixtures that I designed were great. A lot of fun there. I still get phone calls sometimes. Where do I get those light fixtures? Hey, they're custom made. And then it's happening. We've got modern art in downtown Phoenix. It's really a great thing. A lot of artists from ASU, from Tempe. Really a great gathering place. It only lasted a couple of years. We had fun. So now we come back to the Casablanca with Robert Evans. And over the years, the Kellogg Mansion got turned into a company resort. Well, George Christensen got hired to renovate this complex of buildings, and he wanted me to be his landscape architect and site expert. I had so much fun laying out brick sidewalks, doing little courtyard walls. It was really a neat assignment, but you can see there's an airstrip up at the top. This is a company resort. We used to land airplanes here. Just kind of way out in the boonies at Chaparral on 66th Street. So this is what it looked like after my landscaping and my walls, and it really has that southwestern feeling. The battered walls that lean in a little bit. It's the light reflective plastic surfaces. We had fun doing some custom gates there. But again, are we being fair to the modern times, or are we just playing history? And you can see that I have some fun as a landscape architect here. There are some tight spaces that needed amelioration. So some trellises and bougainvillea get the job done. And of course, can't beat the beautiful desert trees. Oh, the restoration of the fountain, that was a big deal. Everybody said, we gotta save the fountain. And that was really a tricky thing for our team to pull off. But it has limited lawn, mostly desert. So it was a real victory in terms of conserving water. And then I finally get to do a new building. The board of realtors came to me and said, we want a new building. And we're not sure what we want. But I went through the checklist and I said, well, it's a multifunction building. Maybe we can express some of these individual parts, maybe create a little village of buildings. Some of the realtors said that they wanted Santa Fe. And it was really kind of hard to figure out how I might gingerly dance on that. I didn't really want to give up Santa Fe, but you know, when the piper calls the tune, or when the piper plays the tune. But I really wanted it to be a courtyard building, and I even thought maybe there would be a way for the outdoor circulation, you know, outdoor hallways is what I was thinking, rather than having hallways that had to be janitorialized and air conditioned. Oh yeah, and I wanted it to be processional. Would there be a way that maybe it could harken back to some of the history of the New World, of the Maya, the Aztec? Kind of interesting, in the lower right-hand corner, you see these deep recesses, you see these horizontal bands. I kind of wondered if that might not be an opportunity to translate that into masonry. So here we have a bunch of mud that's been baked in an oven. It's called a brick. Why would we build out of adobe, the old technology, when we can build with the new permanent masonry? And you can see it has some pretty neat textures. I really like glass block windows because they let in the natural light. These are western windows, so that was a neat thing to incorporate those. And having some fun with masonry textures, trying to create maybe a building that had 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future. So yeah, we turned out to have a little village of buildings. It turns out that we have the outdoor hallways with metal covered roofs, this pergola system here that you see with the metal, the colonnade. Kind of fun to walk down that pergola. And so here's the Board of Realtors complex, done with 3 different colors of brick masonry. This is a building you could add on to and no one would really even know. You'd just keep adding boxes to it. So it's kind of neat in a way that it would expand itself if it needed to be. And a little bit of the emphasis or battered wall that we used on masonry to kind of create that feeling. Oh yeah, there's the pergola. I think there was a movie called The Bridges of Madison County that was popular at the time. People said, this reminds me of a covered bridges. Okay, whatever floats your boat. But really enjoyed this interior. It's funny how natural light is everybody's favorite. This was a room that was a little darker, a little cooler. It's kind of a commons room. But I think you can feel how the brick masonry really gives a feeling of Sonora to the inside. So this is one of the more unusual ones. I had a Chicago builder, the nation's 9th largest builder, W.E. O'Neill Construction. They had built a high school for me, and they said, we really appreciate your team, and we want to hire you to do our own building, but we don't think we can afford a masonry building. We're going to force you to do a tilt slab building. So I went around looking at tilt slab and tried to think, is there some way I could incorporate the natural geology? Our site, 44th and University, is not very far from the Papago Buttes. We could see it from our property. But this uplifted geology and some of the curving shapes, some of the feelings of the natural world, would there be a way I could bring that into this design? So here we are with some interesting curves in a tilt slab building, a little different. And you can see I had fun with the flagstone. It starts on the sidewalk, It rises and goes inside the building and jumps back outside, creates a little curving wall. I even had fun with the flagstone here where I tried to make it feel Anasazi, trying to make it feel ancient. And we have a proper reception desk, so that's a little bit of an Arizona touch. And heavy blue layer beams, here we have the open beam ceiling again. And it was kind of fun to figure out a way to have a curving roof with straight beams. That's an interesting trick, right? So yeah, you can see how I pulled off the curving ski jump roof with straight beams, copper shingles that kind of tell you where you are in the world. Here's the curving stone wall. Way down at the far hand, right-hand side was the employees' entrance. And I thought, the employees deserve to have something fun. So we put a little patio back there that they could have lunch on and create a little portal for them to walk through. So the next slide shows, here's the employee entrance, which is kind of fun. And very modern, part of the new century, the new architecture of Arizona. So here's a school that I want to share with you. I didn't bring very many schools. Our firm was kind of known for remodeling schools and building new schools. But I was always intrigued with the sedimentary aspect of masonry. And, like layers of the seabed, I tried to kind of recreate that with these different colors of masonry. So here's the Carbonate Elementary School. You can see that I have the metal roof again. Desert colors, precast concrete columns. And how interesting to have to design a space that would do four things. It had to be an auditorium, it had to be a cafeteria, it had to be the kids' zone at the school, it had to be a gymnasium. So we had fun putting together a really nice big great room for them, along with these other functions. And I've always kind of said that maybe the shadows help define the building. You can see that this wall of the gymnasium was given a concave curve. Well, the result is that the shadows change throughout the day. As the sun moves, got little glass block inserts here. And of course, my favorite models, whenever I go out to take photographs of buildings, I always get my kids to come. So you're going to see my kids again and again on these photos. Here's a very special house that was done for two mathematics professors, and they really wanted to do the affordable small house. And they had a pretty nifty lot that looked at the back of the buttes, so they wanted a lot of glass, look out to the buttes. They were kind of on board with the idea that it might be masonry and we could afford it. Now, all the green that you see here is glass, and up top, above the tall room, you see a linear glass window that makes the ceiling kind of float. I never got to do this before, but this floating ceiling is really pretty effective. And, here you see the exterior, which is not dramatic. It doesn't say here, look at me, break in and steal my stuff. Instead, it says we're modest. We're fitting into the desert. And this building in 20 years has never needed exterior paint. It's never needed interior paint. It's got travertine floors throughout. Never had to change the wall carpeting. Talk about being sustainable. You don't have to paint, you don't have to recarpet. That's the Mother Earth. So not surprisingly, the entry is a courtyard. Surprise, surprise. Let's extend the outdoor living. And it's very cozy. Here's my glass block windows again. Nice little entry fountain. Travertine, outdoors as well as inside. How neat that we had budget enough. Well, we didn't build a garage, so that helped. Without building a garage, you have money to put into the building. Wonderful kitchen. It's right adjacent to the great room. So very much to the modern approach where we all entertain in the kitchen and talk to our guests in the living room. We've seen travertine floors. Nice views to the outdoors. This is my favorite shot. Mount Phone, the outdoors comes in. The inside goes out. The travertine floor goes from inside outside. The ceiling goes from inside outside. And those in the room that know about the cost of glass, you always save a lot of money when you can break up the glass into smaller sheets. Well, I didn't love here. If you're on a budget, okay, you can't afford to have large sheets of glass, but I'm not missing it here. I'm kind of enjoying the grid. If any of them get broken, it's a lot easier to replace the smaller. Yeah, beautiful shot. Here's the indoor-outdoor feeling. That's the legacy of modern Sonoran architecture, isn't it? Indoor-outdoor relationships. And honest materials, right? Not too much phony stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to bring you back to 1978 when I was a young guy. I was a design-build guy, and I was going to do a $55,000 house. And how I talked the bankers into loaning me money. When I was 27 years old, it looked like I was about 20. But I had a set of plans, and I had bought a lot. And they didn't really care whether I was going to do a roofing agreement house, but I wanted to be this people when you get down to the ground. Well, I was a young, strong guy, former athlete. I carried 30,000 concrete blocks off the back of this truck. Did it maybe 6 blocks at a time. But I would work in a big firm downtown, and at night I would stack blocks. On Saturday, I'd hire one guy. And I got to be the mason. I got to lay block, and I got to really build. And I still have my trowel in my garage, and every once in a while I think I'm going to get out and lay some mason stone, mason block, and be a builder. So yeah, here I am, working away. I sent one of these shots to my son to show him that there was a time when I really did have a waist and I did have a neck. But that's life. Gravity wins. On the right-hand side, you can see that I'm hanging a couple blue lamp beams. There's some steel hangers that I embedded in the wall there. You'll see them in the next slide. So here's that big key then. You can see the metal beam hangers where I was going to be hanging those beams. Again, I'm trying to look for that indoor-outdoor relationship here. And if you see the curving outdoor grand courtyard, in the next slide you'll see the curving wall through the glass. Yeah, there it is. That's what it looks like. Years later, finished. Here's my Harry Vertoya chair. One of the best, most comfortable chairs I've ever had. And a wooden ceiling. There's no drywall in this house. Can you believe that you could build a house with no drywall? All the interior walls are heavy masonry. It creates a thermal flywheel effect where once the house is cool, it tends to stay cool because the interior walls don't go through the diurnal changes. So not only that I got to do wooden ceilings throughout the house, heavy masonry throughout. Brick floors, again, so many brick units, it's crazy. Here's the small courtyard that we saw before. This is what it looks like on the inside. It's been a great thing to have for sunning and after a shower to go out there and dry off. Next is the big courtyard, recently repainted. So that was kind of fun for me to change the color. I've now got a blue accent wall. That's fun to. And I think you can kind of see this greenhouse window that I fabricated. That was kind of an unusual thing where I really wanted to have a curving glass window, but I couldn't afford it, so I decided to do it in faceted glass. Next shot shows it again. Yeah, here we are. Here's the kitchen greenhouse window. So I haven't ever done very much welding in my life, but it was fun to do that with a helper and a welder, and also cutting and fitting all of those little pieces of glass together. Running a later vlog. And here we are in the big sunken courtyard looking back. And I don't really use the fireplaces very much, but I mean, it's kind of nice to have that. You know, I've got that in before. Maricopa County wouldn't allow those. But you can see there's another custom greenhouse window off to the right-hand side there. So my camp, I've been in it for more than 40 years, and it's still under construction. Yeah, I like to brag to people. I said, you know, like, I started building my house when I was 27 years old, and I'm gonna finish it someday. So here I am, but I'm kind of semi-retired now. It's almost 73 years old. I've had a long journey and a long ride, and I'm so glad that you guys came tonight to share some of it with me. I was kind of challenged recently. Somebody came up to me, a couple of retired ASU professors, and he said, "You think you could do some world-class architecture?" And I said, "Well, why? What are you thinking?" They said, "Well, we want to do a proposal for the failed Arizona Coyote site in Tempe. We've got a 65-acre site, and we want to induce the city council and the mayor in doing some world-class architecture." And I said, "Well, you want me to play Palo Solari, huh?" And so they had me do this crazy, next slide, had me do this crazy, this is a Photoshop drawing that I did, that right there on the Rio Salado where the airplanes fly, I needed to have a curving roof that would reflect the airplane sounds and kind of give this world-class idea. We had a meeting recently with the mayor and his lieutenants, and they are very intrigued by it. So I don't know, maybe there's a $200 million project waiting for me. I have no idea. But maybe the next time we get together, I can tell you about it. And I might even next time let you know about my continuing love of masonry, my different textures and colors and surfaces, the masonry of Sonora. Or I can tell you about the golf course that I did with Arnold Palmer. You didn't know that he was a chain smoker, did you? What an interesting guy. And for Lauren Kramer, here we go, Lauren. We were together working on the Beast. It later became a beauty. It's amazing how that facility is so much beloved by so many of the people that worked in it, because it was designed for people. It saved footsteps. It was going in for innovative design. It saved a lot of money on the outside. So there's not much there. It's a functional building. Maybe there's one more. Yeah, I might even take you to the wine country. How fun for me to do a $22 million residence in the wine country. Wow. That was... So again, I want to keep it short here. Thank you so much for being patient. Your wonderful audience to come out. And I'm hoping that I can get Design Within Reach to do this again. And maybe Don Ryden is next, I don't know. So thank you very much for the hospitality.